Blake Snyder's 15 Beats is a plot structure that breaks down the typical 3-act structure of any movie into bite-sized, manageable pieces, each with its own goal for the movie's overall story. This structure is essential when writing a compelling story and can be found in any great movie. One I'd like to examine today is M. Night Shyamalan's Unbreakable. We start with the opening image. This represents the struggle and tone of the overall story. Here we see the birth of Elijah Price, a genius born with a condition that leaves him with extremely brittle bones. This establishes the movie's overall struggle of one trying to complete themselves. Next is the theme stated, which tells us what the story is about. In this case, we see David Dunn as the sole survivor of a brutal train crash. This establishes the movie's theme of David discovering his extraordinary self. With the setup, we see as David returns to his family that his life is anything but extraordinary, bordering on dull. We see the issues he has with his wife and his disappointment with an injury he sustained as a teen, one that threw off his plans of becoming a football star. The catalyst is the moment where the main character's life changes. After David returns to his car from a funeral, he spots a mysterious note on his windshield inviting him to a comic art gallery called Limited Edition. The debate is the point of the film where our hero doubts the journey they're presented with. They're scared of the risks they must take, and wonder if they have what it takes to rise to the challenge. This is where David and his son meet Elijah. Elijah questions David on if he's ever been injured or sick, proposing that David could be a real-life superhero, but David rejects Elijah as simply crazy. The break into 2 is where the main character finally decides to set out on their journey. This is where the pace of the movie changes. Here we see David test his strength, inadvertently discovering that he is able to lift over 350 pounds with relative ease. He goes back to talk with Elijah, and they determine that David's fear of water is his weakness, his kryptonite. They also learn that David's innate talent to pick out dangerous people in his security guard job is actually the ability to see what crimes they've committed by touching them. The B story is where more discussion about the movie's theme takes place. In this case, it's a flashback to Elijah's childhood. We see his struggle with his medical condition and his growing obsession with comic books. Here we also see more clearly Elijah's belief that the philosophy in comics translates to the real world. The next step, known as fun and games, is when the main character begins to explore this new metaphorical world they find themselves in. When David goes to talk with Elijah, he realizes that he subconsciously faked his injury, and in his life he's never been hurt or sick. This motivates him to hesitantly continue exploring his potential. The midpoint is the time in the story where everything is either great or awful for the main character, but they still don't have what they need. In this case, as David still struggles with his abilities, his son gets into trouble at school, and David learns it's due to his son's frustrations that his father is rejecting his powers. The bad guys close in. This is where all the physical and emotional doubt, jealousy, and fear regroup to stop the main character from reaching his goal. After seeing the problems within his family that his newfound powers have caused, David renounces his powers and officially cuts ties with Elijah, severely angering the latter. All is lost. This serves to be the polar opposite of the previous beat, where the character's goal looks more impossible than before. David reluctantly goes to the train station to test his powers again, this time letting bystanders walk into him, seeing all the terrible acts they've committed. It is also where he sees a crime he can still stop. A janitor at the station has taken a family hostage in their own home, and is still keeping them there. The dark night of the soul is the moment where the hero must decide to pick themselves up again, and not allow themselves to be defeated by their hardships. This is where David chooses to go save the family, and after nearly dying by drowning in their pool, he takes down the janitor and rescues the family before quickly leaving. The break into 3 is the moment where the main character chooses to try again, and not be defeated in life. After the local newspaper covers David as a mysterious hero, he accepts his new life, and his son promises to keep it a secret, bonding the two together. The finale is when the main themes of the movie all start to come together, and finally make sense in the film's grand scheme. We see David meeting Elijah's mother, and she tells him about the idea of heroes and villains, and the archetype of the hero that uses brute strength to fight, and the villain that only uses his mind. This leaves David confused as he goes to talk with Elijah. The final image is the culmination of everything. We see a cemented change in the main character and what their journey has led up to. As David goes to shake Elijah's hand to thank him for his help, he sees that Elijah is the one who orchestrated not only his train crash, but several other tragic events in history. Also, Elijah could find his archenemy, someone who is the true opposite of him. This is where Elijah is truly born as he declares himself complete and names himself Mr. Glass, contrasting with the opening image and leaving David as the broken one.